As members of Western culture, we live in a society that is heavily influenced by a philosophy called modernism. And even though it is often attributed to the early 20th century, its core principles remain integral in the way we view the concept of truth. It was a movement that was expressed in the art, literature, and politics of the time, and its proponents believed that everything old had to be made new, and everything traditional pushed aside to make way for the material progress of man. Current attitudes do certainly vary, but it can be generally understood that modernism has made us collectively indifferent toward objective realities, including religion. Citing higher priorities, such as career advancement, we invest very little time and effort in trying to understand conceptions of important truths, and perpetually default to a position of skepticism. A major factor for its success was the boom created by the Industrial Revolution and the developments of both technology and mass production of goods. Ideologies that were seen as hampering this growth were increasingly looked on with disgust, including traditional religion. The four essential marks of modernity include moral relativism, or the belief that morality is a circumstance of the time or the particular society in which it is legislated. In the traditional view, morality was upheld by the church and the monarchy and was considered to be evident in the natural law. It was also considered to be innate to every human person and not merely a product of socialization. Autonomy of the individual. In a general sense, even among people who consider themselves religious, the modernist period spawned an attitude of disdain for institutions, whether civil or religious. These were sentiments that led to the overthrow or relegation of both the monarchy and the Catholic Church. The notion is now held that any authority over an individual is intrinsically corrupt because it requires submission towards it and interferes with the principles of individual autonomy. Mainstream Christian theology was also heavily influenced by this. The 20th century saw the booming growth of what is known as non-denominational or Bible Christianity. In this sect, each person is ultimately responsible for interpreting the scriptures and applying this theology subjectively to one's own life, and to reject the infallible authority of priests or pastors. Christian denominations, although tolerated, are frowned upon because they take away the autonomy from each Christian to interpret as they see fit. This falls perfectly in line with the modernist attitude and coincides with the movement's rise. Narcissistic hedonism. Probably one of the most evident consequences of modernism is the high priority our culture has given to the pursuit of pleasure. Out of all the messages we received in the media on a daily basis, the vast majority are consumerist in nature that directly appeal to our need for convenient and cheap ways to obtain pleasure. The acceptability of both the sexual revolution in the 60s and the consumerism of the 1950s came as a result of the transition from traditional morality to the modernist standard. Reductive naturalism. Unable to convince the masses that there was no God, an idea that failed during the Age of Enlightenment, modernism was successful in generating a general doubting of the certainty of God's revelation, counter to what the Church taught. This general mood of agnosticism proved successful and was enough to undermine the authority of the Catholic Church in society. It is the reduction of reliability down to what one can hear and see and empirically investigate. This assumes many things, however, including that science itself is certain. Modernism overshadows traditional ideas about principle and virtue, the very things which uphold a healthy, thriving civilization, and has replaced them with a fantastical conception of self-love.